He is a man who has it all: money, power, a career that everyone desires, but cannot find the most important thing: peace of mind. After an incident that no one wants to mention, Matthew Caldwell built himself a closed world where love is a luxury and trust has almost no place to stay. Until the day she entered his life, a strange woman with gentle eyes, a gentle way of speaking, and something that he himself could not name. Not noisy, not ostentatious, but there is something about her that makes his cold heart start to beat slowly. However, sometimes, the people who enter our lives are not random. They bring something, an unfinished past or an unspoken secret. And when everything is brought to light, what will he do? Forgive, move on, or turn away forever? New York, a cold autumn morning. Matthew Caldwell sat in his office, eyes flicking to his laptop screen, but his mind completely blank. He had a list of potential candidates for Sophie's nanny position. None of them lasted more than a month. Sophie hadn't opened up to anyone since her mother died 2 years ago. He sighed, rubbing his temples. It had been 2 years, but the memories of his ex-wife were still fresh. Amelia, the woman he had loved so much, had passed away in a tragic car accident. Matthew had been so absorbed in his work that he had not been there for her. The guilt gnawed at him every day. His 6-year-old daughter Sophie was also suffering in her own way. She had been a lively child, but after losing her mother, Sophie became quiet, afraid of strangers, and even refused to talk to her previous nannies. Matthew knew his daughter needed someone patient, someone who could help her through this trauma. But who could that person be? The phone rang, pulling him out of his thoughts. His secretary informed him that the next candidate had arrived. Ava Thompson sat in the waiting room of the Caldwell Tech building, her hands clutching her small bag. She looked around, a large, modern, luxurious space that was so foreign to her. "Miss Ava Thompson, please come in." She took a deep breath and walked into the room. Matthew looked up at the woman before him. Her eyes were a soft brown, but they held a strange softness. Her face was tense, but she remained calm. "Ms. Thompson?" "Yes, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Caldwell," Ava replied, her voice soft but confident. Matthew nodded, looking at the file on the table. "You were a musician?" Ava pursed her lips. "Yes, but I no longer pursue that career." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask further. "Do you have experience as a nanny?" "I used to take care of children in a community center. I love children, and I thought I could help Sophie." Matthew slowly observed this woman. She was not like the previous nannies. People come and go just because of the attractive salary. There is something different at Ava. "I don't need a nanny just to look after my daughter. I need someone who can really connect with her." Ava smiled. "I understand. And I believe that sometimes music can help heal broken souls." Matthew frowned. Her words shook him a little. Before she died, Amelia often told him the same thing. Just then, the door opened slightly, and a little girl with long brown hair timidly poked her head in. Sophie huddled behind the door, her eyes curiously on Ava. She said nothing, just stood there silently. Ava didn't try to start a conversation right away. She looked at Sophie gently, then turned her eyes to the piano in the corner of the room, an instrument that seemed to have been long forgotten. Without a word, Ava walked over and gently placed her slender fingers on the keys. A slow melody played, a familiar, nostalgic lullaby. Sophie paused. The little girl opened her eyes wide, as if trying to remember something. This song, her mother used to sing it to her every night before she went to sleep. Small hands clutched the edge of the shirt, eyes sparkling with emotion. Matthew was also stunned. How did she know this song? When the song ended, Ava turned to Sophie and said softly, "Do you like this song?" Sophie didn't reply, but after a moment's hesitation, she slowly moved a little closer to Ava. "That's something no one has ever done." Matthew was surprised. For the first time in 2 years, Sophie wasn't running away from a new nanny. He looked at the woman before him again. She had not only caught Sophie's attention, she had touched her heart in a way no one else had. After Sophie left, Matthew crossed his arms over his chest, looking at Ava with a thoughtful gaze. "How do you know that song?" Ava was startled, but quickly regained her composure. "I've heard it before." "Where?" She smiled slightly, but did not answer directly. "Music has its own way of connecting people, Mr. Caldwell." Matthew stared at her, trying to read something in her eyes. But in the end, he just nodded slightly. "You can start working from tomorrow." Ava left the Caldwell Tech building, taking a deep breath. She had taken the first step, but she knew her secret could not be hidden forever. She didn't come here just to be a nanny. She came here because of a promise to a deceased person, and because of a secret from the past that Matthew never knew. Ava was unlike any nanny she had ever had. She didn't force Sophie to do anything she didn't want to do, nor did she treat her like a pathetic child who needed pity. She was patient, gentle, and sensitive. In the early days, Sophie kept her distance, but Ava was not discouraged. She started with small things. Read books with her, help her pick out her clothes in the morning, sit patiently beside her when she won't talk. Then, the miracle happened. One morning, Matthew was buried in his financial reports when he heard giggling coming from the back garden. He was startled. How long had it been since he heard Sophie laugh like that? He left his desk, stepped outside, and saw a strange sight. Ava was sitting on the grass, using small stones to form a heart shape on the ground. Sophie knelt beside her, her eyes sparkling with delight as she placed the stones in the right place. "Look, Dad!" Sophie turned suddenly, holding up a turquoise stone. Matthew stood still. Since when did Sophie call him Dad so naturally? Since when did her eyes stop being sad? And since when? Could Ava make her laugh like this? He looked at her. In the soft morning sunlight, Ava looked like an angel. Gentle, warm, and full of life. What is this feeling? Matthew began to observe Ava more. She is not only a good nanny, but also brings warmth to this house, something he had lost long ago. She never forced Sophie, but had a way of helping her open up naturally. For example, that evening, when Sophie refused to eat her green vegetables instead of forcing or coaxing her, Ava took a crayon and drew on a napkin a picture of a princess with a dress made of broccoli. Sophie laughed and finally tried a bite. Just one simple action. But Ava can make Sophie do things that no one could convince her before. Somehow, that made his heart flutter. But he couldn't let this happen. Can't let myself believe in love again. Because the last time I loved, I lost the most important person. Late one evening, Matthew returned home after a long day at work. He put down his briefcase, took off his tie, and walked into the living room. And then, he stood still. From the piano in the corner of the room, a familiar melody was playing, a melody that he could never forget, lullaby that Amelia, his ex-wife, used to sing to Sophie every night. Matthew felt his heart tighten. How does Ava know that song? He quietly approached. Ava was playing the piano, her fingers lightly moving over the keys, her eyes slightly closed as if lost in memories. The sight gave Matthew a strange feeling, like she wasn't just playing music, but she was remembering something, or someone. When the music ended, Matthew spoke up. "Ava." She turned, startled. "Oh, Mr. Caldwell, you're back?" He did not answer her question. "How do you know that song?" Ava bit her lip. I've heard it before." "Where?" Matthew's voice was slow, but somewhat sharp. Ava looked straight into his eyes, but this time, she didn't smile like she usually did. "It's just a little melody, right?" Matthew frowned. She was being evasive. He didn't understand why, but he felt like Ava was hiding something very important. A secret you need to know. Matthew is not the type to easily ignore unusual things. And Ava, she's so mysterious. The song is not a popular tune. It is not a song that can be easily found online. How do you know? That question lingered in Matthew's mind for days afterward. One morning, while Sophie was playing in the garden, Matthew entered the study and sat down in a chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. He decided to do what he always did best: investigate. Matthew opened his laptop and typed in the search bar the name Ava Thompson. And then, he was stunned. The screen showed a series of old articles. Ava Thompson, an up-and-coming musician, a talent once considered to be one of the best in the music industry. But then, she disappeared. No reason? No announcement? No scandal leading to the collapse. She simply disappeared from the music world. Why would someone with such a bright future suddenly give it all up? Matthew frowned, feeling something was wrong. That evening, Matthew entered the old storage room. He had not opened these boxes since Amelia's death, but today he needed to find something. Flipping through stacks of old papers and family photo albums, he suddenly saw a yellowed photo, and his heart stopped beating. The photo was of Amelia, and next to her was Ava. The two stood next to each other, smiling brightly at the camera. Matthew's hand clenched around the photo. Ava and Amelia know each other. No, not just know each other. They had a relationship he never knew about. The next day, when Sophie was asleep, Matthew looked for Ava. She was sitting on the sofa in the living room, sipping a cup of tea. When she saw Matthew's serious gaze, she put the cup down. "Mr. Caldwell, what's the matter?" Matthew said nothing, just pulled the photo from his pocket and put it on the table. Ava saw it, and her face paled. "Explain," Matthew said in a low voice. Ava bit her lip, her fingers trembling as she touched the edge of the photo. After a long while, she let out a soft sigh, as if she could no longer avoid it. "Amelia is my sister." Like thunderbolt, Matthew was stunned. "Your sister?" Ava nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. "Half-siblings." And Ava began to tell, a story that no one has ever heard. Her father was a rich man, but also a traitor. He had a legitimate family, Amelia's family. And then he had an affair with Ava's mother. Ava was born into alienation. "My mother never wanted to destroy Amelia's family," Ava said, her voice shaking. "But when I was little, my father abandoned us both. He went back to his legal wife, and my mother raised me on her own." Matthew's eyes were still filled with shock. "So how do you and Amelia know each other?" "We found each other as teenagers," Ava said, her eyes glinting with nostalgia. "She knew I existed, but she couldn't do anything about it. Her family didn't accept me, but we still saw each other secretly." The two sisters used to be very close. They share with each other their dreams and stories of youth. It was Amelia who encouraged Ava to pursue music. "She loved my music," Ava said softly. "She was the first person to hear me play the piano. She named the piece I played that night." Matthew felt his heart tighten. He never knew Amelia had a sister, never heard her mention the name Ava. "Then why didn't you come to me in the first place?" His voice was low, mixed with mixed emotions. Ava smiled sadly. "Because when I came, you were too sad, too hurt. I didn't want to appear as a reminder of your painful past." She paused for a moment, then continued. "Before she died, Amelia texted me. She said, if anything happened, she wanted me to find Sophie. She didn't want her to grow up without anyone to love her." Matthew closed his eyes, feeling like a storm was swirling inside him. Ava has always been here, not for work, not for money, but for Sophie, and because of the last promise to his sister. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Matthew said slowly, "You were never going to tell me?" Ava bowed her head. "I don't know." Anger, hurt, and Some other emotion that was hard to name were surging inside Matthew. He wanted to be angry with her, but he also wanted to understand her. He wanted to push her away, but at the same time, he didn't want to lose her. Finally, Matthew just sighed. "Go to sleep," he said softly. "I need time to think." Ava looked at him for a moment, then quietly left. Matthew sat there, looking at the photo on the table, and realized that everything in his life had just changed forever. But instead of making things clear, it pushes Matthew and Ava into a gap that is difficult to bridge. Matthew couldn't deny that he felt betrayed. Since knowing the truth, Matthew became quieter. He remained professional. He still treated Ava politely, but his eyes were different. No more trust. No more warmth. Hurt remains. Ava felt it. She knew. Matthew couldn't forgive. And perhaps he will never forgive her. One night, when Sophie was fast asleep, Ava walked into the living room where Matthew was sitting with a glass of wine in his hand. She took a deep breath. "Matthew?" He didn't turn around, but she knew he was listening. "I'm leaving," she said softly. The words stabbed Matthew like a knife in the heart, but he did not respond. "I came here to protect Sophie, but now I have no reason to stay." She paused, hoping he would say something. A word stopped her, but Matthew remained silent. Ava squeezed his hand. "Take good care of Sophie." Then she turned and walked away. This time, Matthew didn't stop her. The next day, when Sophie woke up, she ran down to the kitchen as usual. But Ava was no longer there. The little girl ran around the house. "Where is Nanny Ava?" The maid bowed her head, not daring to answer. Finally, Matthew spoke. "She's gone." Sophie stood still. Tears welled up in her little eyes. "Dad, are you sending her away?" Matthew felt his heart squeeze. "No, I don't." "Do you hate her?" Sophie sobbed. "Do you know I love her? I want her to stay. She's the only one. The only one." Her voice broke. Matthew didn't know what to say. He had never seen Sophie cry so much. And these are not just the tears of a child. These are the tears of a broken heart. For many days afterward, Sophie became quiet. She doesn't talk much anymore. She doesn't laugh like before. Matthew saw his daughter sitting at the piano, her little hands lightly touching the keys, but not playing a single note. The house became cold, and for the first time in years, Matthew felt alone. He sat in his office, staring at his computer screen. But he couldn't concentrate. Ava was there, helping him connect with his daughter. She helped Sophie smile again. And now, she is gone. Matthew made a mistake. But is it too late to fix it? One afternoon, Matthew was cleaning out the storage room where he had found the picture of Ava and Amelia. And this time, he found a letter. The letter was written in a familiar handwriting, Amelia's. His heart pounded as he opened the letter. "Dear Matthew, if you are reading this, I am probably gone, and I am sorry for causing you so much pain. But there is one thing I want you to know. There is only one person in this world who can protect Sophie like you did. That's Ava. I know who she is, and I trust her more than anyone else. If one day she appears in your life, don't doubt her. Don't push her away. Let her love Sophie, and love yourself, because I know, Matthew, you deserve to be loved again. Amelia." Matthew felt his chest tighten. All the pain, all the hurt, are they just excuses for him to hide the fear in his heart? I'm afraid to love again. Fear of losing again. Afraid to open up to Ava, only to find that one day she would leave him like Amelia. But he didn't realize that. Letting Ava go was the biggest mistake. He clutched the letter in his hand. Then he stood up. "I can't let this end like this. I have to find Ava, because if there is still a chance to correct this mistake, he won't lose her again." Matthew had never felt so sure about anything as he did at that moment. I have to find Ava. It was drizzling as Matthew left the house. He had someone investigate, but Ava never returned to her old apartment, nor did she contact anyone. But he knew where she was. There is one place Ava always returns to whenever she feels lost, which is the park near the river where there is a public piano. And when Matthew got there, he saw her. Ava was sitting on a bench, her eyes quietly looking out at the water sparkling with city lights. Her lonely appearance made Matthew's heart ache. He slowly walked over. Ava. She turned around, her eyes wide with surprise. Matthew? Ava stood up, hastily wiping away the silent tears on her cheeks. Why are you here? Matthew took a deep breath. He had let her go once. He would not let it happen again. Because you were wrong. Ava looked at him, confused. Wrong about what? He stepped closer, his eyes steady. I was wrong for not realizing how important you were to me. Ava bowed her head. Matthew, you don't have to say this. I understand. I kept the truth from you. I hurt you. No, Matthew interrupted. It was my fault for not realizing that I needed you. Ava looked up, her eyes shining with surprise. I need you, Ava, not just because of Sophie, not just because Amelia trusted you, but because… He stopped, took a deep breath. I love you. Ava was stunned. Those words were like a warm wind, blowing away all the ice in her heart. But she still hesitated. Matthew, are you sure? Or are you just feeling guilty? Matthew took her hand, his eyes full of sincerity. Ava, you are not just Sophie's nanny. You are the one our family has been looking for all this time. Before Ava could say anything, a small voice rang out. Miss Ava! Ava turned around and saw Sophie running towards her. The little girl rushed to hug Ava, tears streaming down her face. Where are you going? I miss you so much. I don't want you to leave. Ava hugged Sophie, overwhelmed with emotion. I'm sorry, Sophie. I shouldn't have left like that. Sophie looked up at Ava with sparkling eyes. Will you come back? Ava couldn't refuse. She looked at Matthew. He smiled and said softly, Come home with us, Ava. And for the first time in years, Ava felt like she actually had a home. A few weeks later, on a special evening, Matthew took Ava to the piano room in his house. Ava was surprised. Why are you here? Matthew sat down at the piano, his eyes soft. Because this is where it all began. He touched the keys lightly, then looked straight at her. Ava, Amelia believed that you were the only one who could make Sophie happy. He stopped and took her hand. And I believe that you are the only one who can bring me happiness. Ava held her breath. Matthew took out a small box from his pocket and opened it. A gold glitter ring. Marry me, Ava. Not just for Sophie, but because I love you. Ava shed tears. Not because of pain, but for happiness. She smiled through her tears. I do. Matthew smiled, gently placing the ring on her finger. Then he pulled her into a deep, warm kiss. Sophie stood next to them, clapping her hands happily. Finally, Ava is my mother! All three of them laughed, the room filled with soft light. That evening, the whole family sat around the piano. Matthew sat Sophie on his lap, with Ava sitting next to him. Ava began to play a soft piece of music. Matthew sang, Sophie sang along. In that moment, there was no distance, no more hurt. There is only one complete family, and that's all they need. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this story, don't forget to like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any stories.